Hey, I'm Liz. I spent almost $2,000 buying all 21 of these camping chairs that you're seeing on screen right now. I spent about 5 months testing them all, and in this video, I'll be putting each of them through 6 different tests that you'll see on the screen here. You'll get all this data in these easy-to-read charts that I know you guys love, plus you'll also find out exactly which camp chair to buy and which to avoid, because honestly, not all of them may be suitable for you depending on what you're looking for. Now, let's get straight into the first test, ease of use. For this first test, I looked at 2 main things, mainly how easily I could set up each chair, and similarly how easily I could pack away each one. Here's how I conducted this test. After setting up and packing away each chair at least a few dozen times over the week that I was testing it, I then took out a stopwatch and timed myself to get all the data you're going to see in just a bit. And now here's all the data I promised, and I arranged this table starting from the easiest to set up all the way down to the most difficult to set up. Generally, the longer each chair takes to set up, the longer it'll take to pack away too. Take note that all these timings are based on me setting up and packing away as quickly as I could, and that's after using each chair dozens of times. So on your first try, if you take a bit longer than these timings you see on the screen, it's perfectly normal. Now, if you're wondering how on earth I managed to set up and pack away chairs in like 2 seconds flat, that's because these 3 chairs here do not come with carry bags. You can very easily just pack up and go. The average camp chair does come with a carry bag, and typically setting it up requires you to just take it out of the bag and pull the 4 corners open. Chairs like this take on average about 10 to 20 seconds. One thing to note here is that bigger and heavier chairs tend to take longer to set up and pack away, even if the process is almost the same. For example, look at the Coleman Broadband and the Coleman Big and Tall. Both are from the same brand and both have the exact same setup process. Just grab opposite corners and pull apart. But because broadband weighs just 6 pounds and the big and tall weighs 10 pounds, which is almost double the weight, the setup and pack away timings are about double as well, just because it's a bit heavier to carry when setting it up, and it also takes quite a bit longer to squeeze back into the carry bag. The last 6 chairs on the list are much more packable chairs, so you have to first set up the chair frame, then next you have to fit the 4 corners of the chair fabric on top of the frame, and this takes significantly longer, coming in at between 40 seconds to almost 2 minutes depending on the complexity of the setup. So to sum up, the easiest chairs to set up don't always have a carry bag. They tend to also be bare bones in terms of features, so they're more lightweight, and they also aren't the packable type. Now, based on both the setup and pack away timings, here's how I rated each chair for its ease of use. The next test is comfort, and for that we're going to look at quite a few different chair dimensions. These are the seat size, the seat height, lumbar support, and also the backrest. There's a lot to get into here, and we'll start off with the seat size. To get this sizing, I just used a measuring tape to take first the seat width from side to side, and then the seat depth from the back to the front of the seat. Now here's all the seat size data that you might need, and I've arranged all the chairs from the widest seat width down to the narrowest. I also measured the seat size of an IKEA dining chair that I have at home, and I'll be adding the measurements to the table as a comparison. One tip here is for you to do the same. Just take the seat measurements of a chair that you like at home and compare it to the measurements here, so you have a better idea of how comfortable each camp chair might be. Also take note that quite a few camp chairs have these like metal bars sticking out the sides of the chair, which eat into the seat width. So what I did here was to take the width between the bars instead of the entire width. For example, for the REI Catwell, the total seat width was about 21.1 inches. However, the seat width in between the 2 steel bars came in at only about 17 3/4 of an inch instead, which is the number that I've put into the table. Despite doing so, for the seat width, notice that all the chairs here had measurements that were wider than my IKEA chair. For some reference, if we take a look at the narrowest camp chair on this list, the Kelty Lowdown, Notice that I could still sit in it perfectly without feeling too cramped. Now, just because each chair has a good enough seat width, it doesn't mean that the seat depth would be good as well, and here are all the details for each chair. Take note that those highlighted in yellow have seat depths that are less than 15 inches. The problem with these seats that aren't deep enough is that when you sit down, the seat will end around your middle thigh area, which makes it less comfortable than seats that cover your entire thigh. And because not all camping chairs have flat seats, some of them sink down by quite a bit when you sit down on them, these seats will cut into your thigh area and cut off circulation. For example, for this big Agnes chair that you see on screen, it wasn't comfortable enough for me to sit more than an hour at a time. On the other hand, for me, anything above 15 inches was great. For example, if we take a look at the Yeti Trailhead with 16.5 inches of seat depth, this fits me perfectly. Now that you know everything about the seat size of each chair, we'll move on to our next dimension, the seat height of each chair. Camping chairs do not typically have standardized seat heights. Some brands measure seat height from the front of the chair, but others measure seat height from the bottom of the seat with no one sitting on it. I noticed though that camp chairs tend to be quite slouchy. Notice how it sinks in when you sit down on it. So the measurements I'm about to show you is the real seat height from the ground up to the very bottom of the seat when someone is actually sitting on it. Notice that compared to the IKEA chair, which came in at about 17 inches for me, none of the chairs here have as tall a seat height. Even the tallest camp chair I own, which is the Yeti Trailhead, that's still an inch less tall. Now, it's very important to note that if you don't have good knees and you have trouble getting out of low seats, I would recommend avoiding any of the yellow chairs which have seat heights of 11 inches or lower. This should narrow down the list of potential camp chairs by quite a bit for you. The next seat dimension we're going to go through is lumbar support, which is very important if you don't have a good back. Now, if you sit on any chair you have at home, you can go ahead and try it right now. Notice that they're fairly stable and you don't sink into the chair when you sit on it. This encourages a much better sitting posture like what you're seeing on screen right now. But if you sit on a camping chair, you might notice they're much slouchier and you actually do sink into most chairs when you sit on them. What happens here, for me at least, is that it encourages slouching, and I also felt more pressure at the base of my spine whenever I was sitting in a slouchy camp chair without the proper support. So to test for lumbar support, I first measured the seat height at the front of the chair. Then, after sitting on it, I took the seat height from the ground up to where I was sitting down. This is the real seat height measurement that we went through just a minute ago. Next, I subtracted the real seat height from the front height to find a total seat slouch. The bigger the seat slouch, the worse it felt on my back, hence less lumbar support. Now, based on my testing method, here's how slouchy each of my camp chairs were. The best chair I had with the least amount of slouch is the Yeti Trailhead. This is because it's one of the few camp chairs that has a locking mechanism for its seat to make it completely taut. So when you sit down on the chair, you definitely do not slouch in. The other chairs in green also have relatively taut seats. They do slouch a bit more than the Yeti, but I still felt like they provided enough lumbar support for me. Anything with more than about 4 inches of slouch I considered as having less lumbar support, and as you can see, it's the majority of the camp chairs here. Now, the worst chairs for lumbar support on the list, they slouch in by a whopping 7 inches. These two chairs are lightweight high-back camp chairs that use a scoop shape instead of a traditional flat seat classic shape, so do avoid these if you need lumbar support. Here's what to expect if you buy any of these scoop-shaped chairs. Notice how much the seat slouches in. The last seat dimension we're going to look at is the height of the backrest, so take note of this if you want extra neck support. The main way I tested this was by measuring the height of each chair's backrest, like so, and seeing whether I could rest my head on them. Then, for the camp chairs with a tall enough backrest, I also looked at whether these chairs came with pillows and whether the pillows were adjustable for extra neck support. Then I collated all the data into a single table, and here's everything you need to know. I noticed that any backrest height above 26 inches was more than enough for me to lean back and rest my head. And because I'm not very tall, even for the chairs with less of a backrest, I could still scoot down a bit and rest my head against the back, hence the semi-support. I couldn't do so for anything below 23 inches, so these have no neck support at all, and here's the cooler quad for some reference. Now, please take note that most of these chairs here have a scoop shape with minimal lumbar support. We talked about this just a moment ago, so you have to decide between the two. The only chairs with back support and neck support are specifically the reclinable chairs. The one I got from Decathlon's Quechua brand is pretty good value for money. It doesn't have an adjustable headrest there, otherwise it would be perfect here. Here's a recap of everything we went through for the second test: the seat size, seat height, lumbar support, and neck support from the backrest, and based on all these 4 categories, here's how I rated each camp chair for its comfort. The next test is breathability, and we'll be looking at the amount of mesh each chair has, how hot each chair gets when you sit on it, and also how quickly each of them take to dry out when rained out. And we'll start off with the first point here. For this test, I measured every inch of mesh on each chair, then I compared this amount of mesh to the total seat and total backrest size, and here's a table of the mesh percentages that each chair has. As you can see, there are very few chairs that are made of more mesh than fabric, only those in green are. Your average camp chair will have only between 20 to 40% mesh. Some of them have minimal ventilation in the form of just 2 breathing slits, and a lot of them have no ventilation at all. If you're camping in warm weather, I recommend going for a chair with more mesh. Here's why. When I was using my Coleman broadband chair, which has mesh only on the backrest, I noticed that the backrest always felt cool, while the seat got hot much more quickly. So I conducted a 1-hour sit test with this chair by using a temperature gun to take the starting and ending temperatures of both the mesh and fabric. For the mesh backrest, the temperature increase was less than 3%, but for the full fabric seat, the temperature increase was a whopping 11%, making it a lot warmer and less comfortable in summer. I did this 1-hour temperature testing for the rest of the chairs too, and here's everything you need to know. This is the same table that you just saw, but with an extra column on temperature increase. Generally, the less mesh you have, the higher the temperature increase. Mesh itself tends to go up by only about 1 to 2% in temperature, which is the lowest possible increase and great for summer use. A regular camp chair like the Coleman broadband with an average amount of mesh and typical seat fabrics will go up by about 8% in temperature. However, a lightweight camp chair like the Halinox Sunset with less mesh than the Coleman, if you're wondering why it went up in temperature by only about 5%, that's because the seat fabric is thinner and more breathable, hence not as warm. All the way down at the bottom, we have the Alps Mountaineering King Kong chair with super thick seat fabrics and no mesh at all, and this is meant to keep you warm in the off-season instead of keeping you cool during the summer like the Yeti and REI Campwell. So far, we've gone through the first 2 points, so the last test here is just a quick rain test to show you another crucial difference between mesh chairs and thickly padded chairs. For this test, I took 2 chairs from the same brand, one made of mostly mesh and thin fabrics, and the other has no mesh and very thick fabrics instead. Then I poured 200 milliliters of water on each chair. I let them dry out completely and found that the mesh chair took only about an hour to dry, while the other chair took 3 hours and 15 minutes. Next, I put both chairs through a 1-hour heavy rain test. The mesh chair didn't hold any water at all. Everything flowed through the mesh, so it took much less time to dry. However, the padded chair held a lot of water. It actually soaked through the entire chair and took me a whopping 15 hours to dry. And that's why if you camp in summer and you experience rainstorms, it's naturally best to go with something that has more mesh. And based on everything we went through for this third test, here's how I rated each camp chair for its breathability. Next, we'll be going through all the features of each chair, so whether there's a rocking function, a reclining function, armrests, storage options like pockets and cup holders, and a few miscellaneous features like UV resistance and water drainage. All these features are not strictly necessary, but it adds to the user experience, so I've condensed all the necessary info into a single table for you to check out, and I've arranged all the chairs from the most feature-rich to the least feature-rich. If you're looking for specifically a rocking camp chair, there are only 4 of them on this list, 1 from Nemo and 3 from GCI Outdoor, and I'll quickly show you the range of motion for each chair right now. As for a reclining function, only the Nemo and my Decathlon Quechua chair had that. For armrests, pockets, and cup holders, these are much more common features, but take note that not all chairs have them. Armrests are great for resting your arms, but most lightweight chairs like those in this review don't have them. I also typically like to have at least 1 pocket to keep my phone and other essentials next to me, and also 1 cup holder for a canned drink or a tumbler. The miscellaneous features here are UV resistance, which is something only the more expensive chairs have. Some chairs also come with drainage, so that if the chair is left out in the rain, the water drains down to the ground instead of pooling on the chair, so that it will dry more quickly. If you want a soft cooler in your chair, Coleman has an inbuilt one in the cooler quad, and I found that it's great for fitting 4 canned drinks in there, but not great for keeping them cool over many hours at a time, so it's a tad overrated. The Kelty chairs here have carry bags that double as a foot mat for resting your feet, and I really like the E&O Lounger because it has 2 adjustable heights, one coming in at 9.5 inches and the other coming in at 3.5 inches. Based on all the different features in this table, here's how I rated each chair for its overall user-friendliness. Next up, we're going to look at the overall quality of each chair, and for this, I took into account the materials each chair is made of, the marketed weight capacity, the warranty provided by each brand, and also the stability of each chair. Now, starting with the first point, the materials, here's all the info you need to know. Your typical camp chair will be made of alloy steel, as they don't need to be lightweight. I also noticed that the more expensive and heavier duty chairs tend to have thicker poles, while the more budget chairs tend to have thinner poles, but that may not always be the case. If you're looking for a lightweight and packable camp chair, these will typically be made of aluminum. DAC aluminum is the best because it has a higher specification than aircraft grade aluminum. This is followed by exactly that, aircraft grade aluminum, and only the REI has regular aluminum, which is the least strong. I found most of the fabrics to be really strong and durable as well, made from either pretty thick 600D polyester, ripstop polyester, or a polyester and nylon blend, and only the more budget chairs from Coleman and Cascade Mountain Tech had regular polyester. Now, here's the marketed weight capacity for each chair from the most to the least. Only 3 chairs have an above average weight capacity ranging from 500 to 800 pounds. The rest of the chairs come in at between 200 to 350 pounds, which is pretty average. And here's the length of the warranty provided by each brand. Anything above 5 years is pretty good, 2 years is okay, 1 year is a little bit too short, I think. As for stability, most camp chairs tend to be quite heavy, the feet spread tends to be quite wide, and some even have extra big feet for added stability, and I never had any issues with any of them. For this review, there's only one chair that was slightly more unstable, and that's the REI Camp Dreamer. This chair uses a reverse structure from most other chairs, which is narrow at the front and wide on the sides, making it not the most stable chair that I've tested if you move around on it, and this structure is especially unstable if you lean over the sides. Most other lightweight chairs, though, on the other hand, are wide at the front instead, and this feels much more stable. And based on everything we went through for this test, here's how I rated each camp chair for its overall quality and design. Next up, we're going to look at portability, which means the weight of each chair, the pack size as well, plus how easily you can transport them. Here's all the portability info in one neat table. I've arranged all the chairs in this review from the lightest to the heaviest, and this includes the weight of any carry bag the chair comes with. The lighter weight and more packable chairs in this review come in at between 3 to 4 pounds. A typical camp chair will weigh between 6 to 12 pounds, and the heavier duty ones can weigh close to 15 pounds. For ease of carry, the lighter chairs come with handles and carabiner loops because this is more lightweight, while typical camp chairs come with a single shoulder strap instead. I really like the backpack style type of carry that comes with like heavier duty chairs like the King Kong and the Yeti, which makes it easy to transport despite the heavy weight. Ignoring the pack size and the ease of carry, I rated each of these chairs for their portability based on the weight only, and here's the scoring. And finally, here are all the test scores that you've seen so far. I spent almost $2,000 buying these 21 camp chairs, and I spent 5 months testing them all. So if this video has been helpful, please help me hit that like button. As usual, I color-coded the ratings. Green is for good, yellow is not so good, and red's pretty bad. As for how I weighted each test, I thought comfort was the most important because we looked into a lot for that test. As for breathability, I weighted it low because it really depends on what you're looking for in a chair. A winter chair with less breathability isn't worse than a summer chair with lots of mesh. And since all these chairs are mostly meant for car camping anyway, portability doesn't really matter that much. With that, here's the overall score for each of these chairs. The best one for you ultimately depends on what you're looking for in a camp chair, and here are some of the most important options for you to consider. Feel free to pick and choose which ones best apply to you and skip those that don't. Now on this axis, we have our overall scores that I just showed you, and on this axis, we have the MSRP of each chair. Based on both these data points, here's where every single one of the 21 chairs lie on this chart. Next, we're going to add a trend line to the chart, and I use Microsoft to help me automatically generate this line based on all 21 data points. What this line shows you is that anything above the line, you get more value than what you paid for, and anything below the line, you get less value than what you paid for. That's basically how to read this chart. Now, we're going to start by looking at the best premium pick, and that's obviously the Yeti Trailhead. It scored the highest of all the chairs, but of course the price tag is quite insane as well. If you notice during the testing, the Yeti scored the highest of all the chairs for the comfort test, the breathability test, and also the quality test. It's my only chair that's made of 100% mesh. It's super breezy, it never runs too hot, and this piece of mesh is actually a single piece of fabric for added durability. On top of that, this is one of the few camp chairs that actually have UV resistance. I've had my chair for a few months now, and I've had it out in the sun for at least a few weeks, and so far it's still looking good as new without any fading at all. The Yeti also has the beefiest poles of any of the camp chairs that I've tested, coming in at 1.14 inches thick. And not only are the poles much thicker, the pole joints are significantly beefier, thicker, and high quality too. On the other hand, most chairs have these like very simple rivets instead, which aren't as long lasting. Basically the entire structure of the Yeti, so that's the fabric and the poles. They're just so much higher quality than your typical camp chair. And most importantly, moving on to why it's the best in comfort, here's how the Yeti compares to a dining chair that I bought from IKEA. It has the highest seat height of any of my camping chairs, making it comparable to any chair you might have at home. Also, the seat size is comparable as well, and I thought it was super roomy for me. And when it comes to lumbar support, the Yeti has the most minimal seat slouch of any of my camp chairs. That's why it's so comfortable. It's the closest thing you can get to a proper chair at home. And to be honest, the Yeti is actually more comfortable than some of the chairs I have at home because the fabric isn't completely rigid. When you sit down on it, it actually contours to the shape of your, behind, and this lessens the impact on the base of your spine when you're sitting on the chair. And when you lean back, the backing also contours to the natural shape of your back, giving you natural lumbar support that's honestly even better than some of the chairs that you may have at home, and it's definitely better than this IKEA chair you see on screen. This is the biggest reason to buy the Yeti. If you really need good lumbar support, this is probably the only good option that you have. Of course, the Yeti is not for everyone, so if you're looking for something on a budget, there's quite a few chairs that come in at the $35 to $60 range. Next, we'll rule out all the chairs that fall below the value for money line, and what we're left with is the Coleman Cooler Quad, the Kijaro Dual Lock, the REI Catwell, and the Quechua Reclinable chair. I like the Quechua chair from Decathlon, but it's constantly out of stock though, so we're left with just 3 chairs with all the exact same overall score. Now, my favorite budget chair is the REI Catwell, because you can quite frequently get like 30% off on it, taking the price of this chair down to $42 instead of $60, making it the best value for money off the 3. I have only summer where I live, so I love that this chair is made of like 80% high quality mesh, which is always very breezy for me, and it never runs hot at all. And in the summer with lots of thunderstorms, if this chair gets caught out in the rain, all the water gets drained out very nicely and it never takes too long to dry. I've also had this chair for about 3.5 years now, and even though it's seen many weeks of rain and hot sun, it's still holding up strong with just a bit of minimal rust, because I don't always take very good care of my more budget-friendly gear. If the REI Catwell is not on sale though, you can click on any of the affiliate links below and just go with whichever is the cheapest of the 3. Quick note though, the Coleman Cooler Quad was a bit warm for summer though. The fabric is thicker than average and also traps a lot of water in the rain because of the thick fabric. Now, if you have trouble getting out of low seats and you need a chair that sits as high off the ground as possible, here's a quick summary from the seat height test that we talked about. If you want a chair that's as comfortable as possible with great lumbar support, get the Yeti Trailhead. If you need a budget-friendly chair, the best tall chair is the Kijaro Dual Lock. If you want a rocking camp chair, the best tall one is the GCI Outdoor Freestyle Rocker. And if you want a heavy-duty chair that can support a lot of weight up to 800 pounds, the Alps Mountaineering King Kong is the best for you. Notice that for every single one of these chairs, you get a lot of value for money no matter the price that you pay. On the other hand, if you want a low camp chair instead, which gets you much closer to the ground so you can stretch your legs out, chairs that are specifically made for this use typically come in at between 3 to 4 inches off the ground, and there are 3 options here. My favorite low camp chair is easily the E&O Lounger because it has 2 adjustable heights. If you set up the 4 legs at the bottom of the chair, that gets you 9.5 inches off the ground. But if you want to, you have the option of removing the 4 legs, which gets you 6 inches closer or 3.5 inches off the ground instead. This was super comfy for stretching my legs out, leaning back on the super tall backrest, which also comes with a built-in pillow by the way, and then taking a nap on the chair in the middle of the day. This is easily my favorite feature of the chair. The other 2 chairs here, which are the Alps Mountaineering Rendezvous and the Cascade Mountain Tech Folding Chair, these have backrests that are a bit too low for leaning back and taking a nap. They are great though if you want something on a budget. These 2 chairs are almost like identical, so just go with whichever one is cheaper. If you're looking for a heavy-duty chair with the highest possible weight limit, I've got only 3 options that come in at above 500 pounds. If the price of the Yeti is too much, you can go for either the Coleman Big and Tall or the Alps Mountaineering King Kong, both of which are much more affordable, with only $10 difference between them. If I had to pick only one though, I'd go with the King Kong for a number of reasons. First of which is a 25% higher weight capacity compared to the Big and Tall. The King Kong also comes with a lifetime warranty instead of just 1 year like the Big and Tall, and it has a 7% bigger seat size. The seat height is slightly lower, but it has more pockets and more cup holders. And if you're camping in cold weather, the seat fabric is also thicker and more durable as well. Now, most of the chairs in this review have pack sizes that are humongous, so if you're looking for something that's more packable and more lightweight, yet still offer a lot of comfort, these are the ones to consider. Notice that all 4 of these chairs fall below the value for money line, but that's because the shape of these chairs is more like the backpacking type and less the camping type. The seats are smaller, with less depth. All these chairs are scoop-shaped, meaning they don't have a lot of lumbar support, and they also sit lower to the ground than a typical camp chair. Hence why they didn't score as high in the comfort test as the rest of the chairs, but it's a sacrifice you have to make if you really want a packable and lighter weight chair. My favorite chair of the 4 is easily the Helinox Sunset, and it scored the highest of all the chairs here, for a few main reasons summarized in this table here. The setup in packaway is more intuitive than the Big Agnes and REI, and the seat height is actually higher than even some of my typical camp chairs. This is one of the biggest difference between the Helinox Sunset and the Helinox Chair 2. The seat height is a lot higher. It comes with a good amount of mesh, and even the fabric of the chair is quite breathable. It also comes with a completely adjustable pillow in the headrest, whereas REI's pillow is non-adjustable and not as comfortable. The poles are highest quality DAC, the weight is quite light for a camping chair, and I've had 4 Helinox chairs for quite a while now, and they've all lasted for at least 5 years before the shock cording wears out. For Big Agnes, the waterproof coating at the back started to peel off in about 2 to 3 years, and after I used my Camp Dreamer for just 3 days, one of the poles poked a huge hole into my chair, but I think it's just a manufacturing defect, so I'll just give them the benefit of the doubt. So as you can see here, the Sunset beats out all the competition easily. Moving along, one feature I haven't gone through in much detail is the rocking type of chair, and there are 4 of them in this review. Here are where all of them sit in the chart, and the one that scored the highest, while not even being the most expensive at the same time, is the GCI Outdoor Freestyle Rocker. Definitely the best value for money for sure, as you can see here. GCI uses a specific patented spring action rocking tech, where the back of the chair has these metal tubings that slide in and out of the pistons at the bottom when you're rocking the chair. On top of that, this chair also has front legs for regular chair use. When you sit near the front, the back will lift, and then it's supported by your usual 4-legged chair. One minor con is that this chair doesn't have a full range of motion like a traditional rocking chair. Only the back, which has the pistons, will be able to rock you. If you want a rocking chair with more of a range of motion, the Nemo Stargaze is actually better, because this chair is attached to the aluminum frame via only these 2 steel buckles. There's actually a lot of room for a full rocking motion, and I found that I could swing quite a bit with this chair. On top of just rocking, the Nemo can also be reclined, so even though it's expensive, it's quite feature-rich as well, and still offers good value for money. If you're not using the recline function, this will be the neutral position here, and that came in at just 11 degrees. But if you want to use the reclining feature, you can recline it all the way to a whopping 57 degrees, which is quite a deep reclining angle. It also comes with a full backrest and an adjustable pillow for your head, so this was really relaxing and very comfortable. One minor con here is that there's nowhere to rest your legs there. So another option for a reclining chair is just to get one of these zero gravity reclining chairs instead, if that's something you prefer. If all the chairs in this review are too heavy for you and you need something in the range of 1 to 2 pounds instead, I'll be reviewing a few of those chairs as well. I'll leave the video up on screen for you to check out when it's done. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in that one.